My name is Elina Tran. I'm 31 now, and it's been 5 years since I turned my back on Seattle. Not just the city, but everything tied to it, especially the people. I didn't leave in anger. I left because I was done being unseen. Professionally, I thrived. As a back-end engineer for one of the nation's top cybersecurity firms, I worked behind digital curtains that protected Fortune 500 banks and federal agencies. I wasn't just part of the system, I was the system. I tackled code that confounded entire senior teams. My mind thrived where others panicked. But outside that glowing terminal, in the world that bore my last name, I might as well have been a ghost. To my family, Marcus was the sun and I was shadow. Marcus Tran, star quarterback, Stanford alum, the perfect son in every parent's fantasy. At birthday dinners and family gatherings, it was always Marcus who was toasted, cheered, adored. Me? I was the quiet girl in the corner, fingers stained with ink, face lit by laptop screens. I wasn't hated, I was overlooked. Unacknowledged in ways that sunk deep into my core. We hadn't exchanged words since 2016. Not a call, not a message. Until, out of nowhere, one chilly October night in 2023, my phone buzzed. I was curled up in my Brooklyn apartment, hoodie wrapped tight, swirling a glass of wine that cost less than a sandwich. The name on the screen stopped me cold. Vivian Tran, my cousin, the only family member who had my new number. Elina, her voice came through softly, almost like she was breaking bad news. Your parents, they've been asking about you. They want you to come home for Christmas. Home? The word felt foreign, like it belonged to another language. I stared at the wall. The buzz of the city beyond my window suddenly muted. My last real memory of home was boarding a red-eye to New York with one suitcase and a scholarship acceptance letter clenched in my hand. I left behind a house, not a haven. They've been looking for you, Vivian added, asking around. They seem serious. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I sat still as the years unraveled inside me. Back when I was 13, a child psychologist named Dr. Morgan once told my parents during a family session, Elina isn't distant by nature. She's distant because she's been made to feel invisible. My mother had scoffed, clearly offended. We love both our children equally, but love doesn't always look like balance. At 16, Marcus was gifted a brand new car wrapped in a bow. I was handed a hand-me-down sweater that smelled of someone else's life. Family dinners became highlight reels of Marcus's trophies, his internships, his glowing reviews from professors, my coding trophies, regional hackathon medals, and freelance projects, rarely mentioned, usually forgotten. So I found solace elsewhere. One afternoon, while wandering the high school hallway in search of any place that felt like mine, I saw a torn flyer. Intro to Computer Science Club Room 112. I showed up the next day and kept showing up. The hum of logic, the thrill of building something from nothing, it saved me. I built my first game on a borrowed, dented laptop with missing keys. My computer science teacher, Mr. Carter, once said, "You're not just good, Elina, you're unafraid. Don't let anyone shrink you." So I didn't. I earned a full scholarship to a prestigious tech university in New York. I paid my way through ramen dinners and overnight shifts at greasy diners. I graduated top of my class, signed with a cybersecurity firm before my cap hit the ground, and never looked back. Today, I live in a brownstone in Fort Greene. Not rented, owned. The down payment came from a bank I helped secure against a massive data breach, thanks to a system I designed from scratch. My signing bonus alone was 6 figures. At my housewarming, my best friend Sophie Adams clinked her glass against mine and said, "To Elina, the girl who turned silence into currency." But that message from Vivian undid something in me. A tug, a test. A part of me, small but stubborn, whispered, maybe they've changed. So a week later, I packed a weekend bag and drove the 6 hours back to the neighborhood I'd buried in memory. The house looked the same, only duller. The paint cracked at the corners, the bushes overgrown, the porch light flickering like a dying candle. I hesitated before knocking. The door creaked open. My mother blinked at me like I was an old photograph suddenly come to life. "Elina," she said, almost surprised, "you look different." I stepped inside. The scent of lemon polish and artificial lavender wrapped around me like a lie. Familiar voices buzzed in the background until they noticed me. Then silence. "Well, look who decided to show," someone muttered near the staircase. Marcus emerged from the kitchen, smile bright, arms spread like a politician at a podium. "Hey, everyone, meet Angela." He grinned, gesturing toward a woman at his side with a visible baby bump. "We're expecting." "Congratulations," I said, calm and even. He tilted his head, voice half laughing. "Still working in dark little coding rooms?" I gave a faint smile. "Something like that. Dinner's almost ready." Mom called brightly. "Elina, you'll sleep on the couch. Marcus is using your room as his office now." Of course he was. The dinner table looked almost identical to how I remembered it growing up: chipped edges, mismatched placemats, and the ever-present centerpiece of artificial roses gathering dust. The only thing that had changed was how much tighter the air felt. Or maybe it had always been that way, and I had simply forgotten what suffocation felt like. We gathered around as if we were still a cohesive unit. Marcus took his seat at the head of the table like it had always belonged to him. Angela, glowing and pregnant, smiled politely as if she were navigating a delicate battlefield. My mother served her signature honey-roasted ham with practiced elegance, and my father uncorked a bottle of wine like it was a peace offering. But no one offered me a seat. I found one on my own on the edge, of course, out of the spotlight. "So," Marcus began, with that infuriating confidence, "I've been working on a business venture, a tech-adjacent idea, disruptive stuff." I held back an eye roll. It was the same pitch voice I'd heard from dozens of founders desperate for funding in Silicon Valley, a tone that said nothing but expected everything. "I'm building a platform that connects people with freelancers," Marcus continued, "but it's got this AI integration thing that streamlines onboarding, pricing, all that." I'd heard this exact pitch before. It had failed before, multiple times. "Really needs seed money to get off the ground," he added with a smile that turned slightly in my direction. "About 200 grand. There was a pause. Then my parents lit up like he'd just announced he was running for president. "That's incredible, honey." My mom beamed. "You've always had such vision." My father nodded in approval. "You think this could turn into the next big thing?" Marcus chuckled modestly. "With the right support? Definitely." All eyes turned subtly toward me. I cleared my throat. "Sounds ambitious." Marcus smiled like a wolf. "We could use a CTO. You'd love the back end." I took a sip of my wine. "I've already got a full-time position. Actually, two. And I'm not looking to build someone else's dream right now." Awkward silence. My mother offered a strained laugh. Well, it was worth asking. Dinner trudged on with shallow conversations and forced laughter. I mostly listened, an observer of a play I no longer belonged to. At one point, Marcus mentioned how he'd need to build out a marketing budget and possibly hire a developer in Vietnam for cheap. I nearly choked. I said nothing. When it was over, my mother handed me a thin blanket and pillow. "The couch folds out," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Marcus keeps files in your room now. It's kind of messy in there." Of course it is. That night, lying on that hard pull-out mattress, I stared at the ceiling in the dim light of the hallway and wondered why I'd come back. What I had expected, an apology, recognition, redemption, morning, came wrapped in cinnamon and disappointment. It was Christmas. Downstairs, holiday music played through the same old radio my father repaired yearly out of stubbornness. The tree was up, blinking unevenly. Wrapping paper crinkled as we took our seats around the tree. I had brought thoughtful, curated gifts, luxury skincare for Mom, bespoke cufflinks for Dad, a smart baby monitor for Angela. I even found a rare out-of-print football collectible for Marcus, just because I couldn't bring myself to be petty. Everything was boxed, wrapped, and labeled in gold script. They were surprised. Genuinely. My mother held up the serum bottle. "Elina, this is really nice." I smiled. "Figured you'd like something just for yourself." Then came my turn. Mom suddenly gasped. "Oh, Elina, she looked around. "We forgot to get yours." Marcus laughed, the kind of laugh that said this wasn't the first time. Classic. just like when we were kids. Don't cry this time. I didn't. I reached into my purse, pulled out a small silver ring of keys, and held it up between two fingers. What's that? My father asked. Keys to my new place, I said evenly. Closed on it last week. 2-bedroom condo in Fort Greene. A hush fell. Even the tree lights seemed to blink slower. How much did that cost? Dad finally asked. I kept my voice calm. More than most. My company licensed a cybersecurity system I built to a global financial institution. After taxes, my bonus was around 150. Oh. Forks paused. Jaws slightly parted. Eyes shifted. That's, my mother stammered. That's a lot of money, Elina. Yeah, Marcus added. What kind of job pays that? The kind I've been doing for nearly a decade, I replied. Silently, without needing applause, the mood shifted like tectonic plates. Suddenly I was no longer the ghost. I was the prize. My father straightened. You know, Elina, your mother and I have always been proud of you. We just didn't always understand your world. My mother leaned in, beaming. You must come back more often. Marcus stayed quiet. Angela whispered something I couldn't hear. Later, while everyone was cleaning up, Dad approached me near the stairs. About Marcus's business idea. He began. If you could just take a look at it. Maybe offer some funding. Just enough to help him get started. There it was. I stared at him for a long second. No, he blinked. No, I'm not an investor in wishful thinking, I said. And I don't owe Marcus a thing. But we're family, he pressed, voice strained. I felt a slow burn in my chest. Where was family when I was 18? Living out of a friend's apartment because you told me you couldn't help with tuition. Where was family when I mailed you my first job offer letter and got no reply? Marcus showed promise, my mother said sharply, stepping in. He needed the support. I nodded, almost sympathetically. And I needed a place to sleep. No one spoke. The tree lights blinked. Somewhere upstairs, a faucet dripped rhythmically, like a ticking clock. I think I've had enough holiday spirit, I said, grabbing my coat. You're leaving? Dad asked, bewildered. I already did, I replied. By the time I crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, the gray winter sky had started to turn gold. The city greeted me with the hum of car horns and coffee carts, not judgment and manipulation. As I pulled into the garage of my condo building, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, not relief. Something deeper. Control. Upstairs, I dropped my overnight bag by the door and walked straight to the kitchen. The silence of my home didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I poured myself a glass of Rioja, opened the sliding balcony doors, and let the cold air rush in. The skyline was quiet and endless. I pulled my coat around me and stood there, alone but not lonely. A few minutes later, my phone lit up. A message from Sophie Adams. Your mom's been telling everyone you stormed out and called the family toxic. You okay? I took another sip and typed back without hesitation. Let her talk. I'm not living in her story anymore. I meant every word. The days that followed were quiet. My inbox overflowed with year-end reports and security audits from clients. I dove into the code. That's where I always felt most whole, solving invisible problems for people who didn't even know I existed. And this time, I didn't mind. A few weeks later, I met Daniel Reed. He was sitting alone at a book cafe in Soho, sketching something on a tablet. Our conversation started with a shared complaint about the playlist, then pivoted to design theory, then to personal stories. It was strange how quickly we unraveled in front of each other. Daniel was a graphic designer with a quiet voice and tired eyes. He'd been estranged from his family for nearly a decade. Religious differences, mostly. His father refused to accept who he was. So Daniel had built a life from the pieces he was given, same as I had. We spoke the same emotional dialect, one built on survival, silence, and eventually, peace. He didn't try to fix me, and I didn't try to disappear from him. Over the next few months, we stitched a rhythm out of art and algorithms, food trucks, and museum dates. He brought sketches. I brought schematics. We didn't need loud declarations. We were two quiet people who finally didn't have to whisper. Spring came slowly, painting the city in soft green and stubborn rain. One morning, I woke up to 3 voicemails, all from Marcus. The first was a little desperate. Elina, hey, look, I know things didn't go great at Christmas, but I'm really in a tough spot. Could use your help. The second was guilt-laced. I just thought, we're family, and family shows up, especially when it matters. The third was silence, followed by a deep exhale. Then, forget it. I didn't call back. Later that week, a voicemail from Aunt Helen, a woman I hadn't heard from in over a decade. Then another from a cousin who used to make fun of my glasses at Thanksgiving. I saw what was happening. The ripple had started. Somewhere between the dinner table and the reveal of my salary, I had become valuable. Not in the emotional sense, in the transactional one. To them, I was no longer the invisible girl hiding behind a screen. I was a walking vault, a safety net, a potential donor for Marcus's failing dreams. But they were too late. That version of Elina, the one who begged for recognition, who stayed quiet to keep the peace, she was gone. One evening, as Daniel and I walked along the East River, he stopped and looked at me. Do you think you'll ever talk to them again? I thought about it longer than I expected. I don't hate them, I said finally, but I don't belong to them anymore. He nodded. That's fair. We watched the sunset in silence. By summer, Daniel and I had signed a lease together for a bigger apartment in the same neighborhood. I kept my condo as an office. He turned the guest bedroom into a studio. We made plans to travel to Tokyo, to Florence, to Iceland. I created new routines. Saturday coding sprints, Thursday night Thai takeout, Sunday hikes. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was mine. One morning, a letter arrived, handwritten, from my mother. It was short, apologetic in tone but not in substance. She said she missed me, that she hoped we could rebuild, that Marcus had been going through a lot lately, that he still believed in his startup. I didn't respond. I folded the letter, placed it in a box with other almosts, and tucked it into my closet. People like to romanticize reconciliation. They say things like, family is forever, or blood is thicker than water. But those phrases were written by people who never had to choose between peace and obligation. I did, and I chose peace. Not forgiveness, not revenge, just distance. The kind of space that allows scars to close without being picked at again. I no longer needed their validation. I no longer wanted to fix anything. I didn't even feel angry anymore. What I felt was freedom. Freedom from proving, from chasing, from shrinking. On my 32nd birthday, Daniel surprised me with a small gathering: Sophie, some colleagues, a few new friends we'd made through the design community. As we toasted in my living room, under soft yellow lights, someone asked me what my biggest accomplishment had been this past year. I thought for a moment. Walking away, I said, and meaning it. Everyone raised their glasses. No applause, no fireworks. Just quiet, respectful understanding. Later that night, Daniel pulled me aside and said, "You know what I admire about you?" I smiled. My devastatingly efficient firewall configurations? He laughed. That too. But really, it's the way you didn't let being invisible make you bitter. You just built your own spotlight. I kissed him. That's because I stopped waiting for anyone else to flip the switch. The last time Marcus called, I didn't even let it ring. And I never would again. Not because I hated him, but because I had nothing left to give, nothing I wanted to take back. Because I had already chosen something better. Something I built on my own. Peace. And I was never going back.